Hi, how are you doing? I'm so excited
Oh,
to have you today. Thank you so much
thank you.
for being
Nice,
with us.
nice to see you guys.
Nice to see you too. We might have some members pop in. They usually kind of like show up late. So just
Okay,
putting it a heads up. I
no
know you
problem.
do have to kind of like jump off at 6 o'clock, but
Yeah,
we're really excited. I know the presidential debate.
big deal. It's a big deal.
It is a big deal, but we're super excited to have you. How
Yeah,
have you
thank
been?
you. I'm good. I'm good. I was literally just on a TikTok live right before this. So I like, so speaking of the TikTok audience, it's interesting now just because I've been on television so many years and dealing with regular viewers versus dealing with the TikTok users. Totally different dynamic. Never dealt with it before. And when I started on television, there was no internet. So there was no social media and people couldn't reach you, like that wasn't a thing. If they hated you, they had to write a letter and send it to the station, like that's how long ago it's been. So it's a whole new dynamic to have like such a like onslaught of viewers and opinions that are not usually so nice thrown at you.
I'm sure it is. But that actually kind of like brings me into my first question for you. Can you kind of like talk about your background and tell us like how you kind of like got into the whole social media aspect?
Well, sure. So, how many of you guys are all journalism majors?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So awesome. Thank you. I I told my mom when I was 4 years old that I wanted to be a reporter on TV. I grew up in Los Angeles, and my parents watched Channel 4. They watched NBC. And so I would see them, the reporters out in the field, and I was 4 years old, and I pointed at the television. And I said, I want to do that. And my whole life I spent working on doing that. So I went to USC. I got my undergrad and my master's degree in journalism at USC. And quite frankly, I did everything you're supposed to do. I was part of our all the journalism societies at USC. I did the student television network. Like I did all of those things. But then when push came to shove, and it was like time to get a job, I was like, I don't really want to leave home. I'm scared. Like I'm scared to move because nobody I know ever really leaves here. So finally, I just bit the bullet and I got my first job in Tallahassee, Florida. So market 110.
Oh, wow.
By the way, I graduated in May and I didn't get that job until December. So and I sent out hundreds of, and that was at the time when you had to send a VHS tape, like a physical tape, to news directors. And so I sent out hundreds of tapes, and the one and only offer I got was Tallahassee, Florida, and I took it. And let me tell you something, those were the most terrifying and best years of my career. It was awful. I cried every day. Swear to God, I cried every day. It was awful. But I learned things in those 2 years I spent in market 110. I learned things that I still do to this day from those 2 years I was there. And I jumped from market 110 to market 12. So, and I did it in like a year and a half, 2 years. So I went from Tallahassee, Florida to Tampa. And then I went from Tampa to Vegas. And then from Vegas to San Diego. And then San Diego was my last regular local news gig. And now I own my own TV show, which is awesome. And it's like really the dream because like now nobody's telling me what to do. Nobody's telling me your hair's too long. Like you have to cut your hair. Like nobody's telling me that anymore, which by the way, they definitely did. Or they're saying, you can't wear that. And now I'm like, whatever, I'll do whatever I want. I'm the boss. So now I own my own TV show that's on the air of KDOC in Los Angeles. and then I co-own the digital network where it lives. And we're always, now we're always looking to curate new creators, new voices, new journalists, we're always trying to find new people. So I've always been a part of social media. I mean, since it started, obviously, I was never really into Facebook, but I've always been on Twitter. I've been on Twitter for, however long, 10, 12 years at this point. So I've always been involved in social media. I find it very, very helpful for journalists. Twitter in particular, there's a lot of really good journalists who are on Twitter. And I find a lot of my story ideas there. I find a lot of really good interaction with viewers there, that especially when you're on the local news level and you're trying to talk to, find out what's happening in your community, which is half of what goes on in local news. It's a really good opportunity for you to connect with people there too. And then as a fluke, then of course I got on Instagram, but Instagram is not great for journalists, but just for the record. It's great for influencers, but it's not great for journalists. But as a fluke, I got on TikTok. I didn't mean for it to turn into what it's become. I started right at the beginning of the pandemic. So in late February, my first TikTok post I started an account in November and I didn't really do much with it. And then at the beginning of the pandemic, I did my first video about the travel ban and it took off. And it's only gotten bigger and bigger and bigger since then. And so what I have learned, and I think this is important for all of you that are studying journalism, people are desperate for facts. They are desperate for news. They are desperate for real information. At the same time, I think the latest LA Times poll, only like 12 or 13% of people believe journalists. So we have really dug ourselves a huge hole in journalism. And so it's up to us to always be on our game and never drop the ball. Because if we do, we only feed into that problem that has persisted over the last, I would say, 10 years. Sloppy journalism. I don't even call it journalism. I call it just commenting. It's just sloppy. It's sloppy work. They're not trying. They're being biased on purpose, and they're masquerading as journalists, and it's a problem. And we now have seen the ramifications of what that problem has become, which is now only 13% of people believe us. And that's a huge problem. So I find that through social media, that's an uphill climb for me too. And I've been doing this 20 years, and I've been part of like I said, I was part of the old school where we were actually physically sending tapes and there was no internet. And so I was taught by real old men, like super old men, like they would be 100 years old now, these are the old guys. And so I still my mental state when I'm reporting is always that same basics that I learned in Tallahassee, Florida. Same basics. Fair, accurate, and always right. Never putting out misinformation. And if you know it's wrong and it goes out on accident, you immediately fix it. So all of those things plus consistency over time. Constantly showing up and constantly being right and accurate and fair. Over and over and over and over again, even when they say to you, which they will, you're a liar. In fact, I wrote some of the ones, just some of my favorites, just my faves, like on the most recent posts. Let's just see. Liberal media trash. This is all lies. You belong on a stripper pole. Oh my God, you're the most annoying host ever.
Wow.
That's just one, and that's not even a fraction of how many are on there. This is the world that we've now created through social media and how we have to deal with it. And I just keep my head down, accurate, fair, right, all the time, consistently. That's all I can do. That's all we can do as journalists. Mm-hmm. And as long as in your brain, you know you're being fair, accurate, and right all the time, you've done your job.
So why did you pick politics out of everything that you've done? Like what kind of, like, were you always a political reporter?
So funny. I hate politics. I actually hate it. I actually just despise the whole concept of it. No, when I was younger, I wanted to be a sports reporter. I mean, you guys are all too young to probably to remember Hannah Storm, but Hannah Storm was a sports reporter on NBC. She covered basketball. Now she covers everything, but I wanted to be her. I wanted to cover sports. And then for a while I worked in Hollywood and I wanted to work at E! And then here's the thing in journalism. And if you're looking to go into looking to go the path of a real journalist, which is you start in a small market and you work your way up, you don't have a choice. You cover what they tell you to cover. And you don't get to pick a specialty. That's not a thing. It's just part of being a well-rounded journalist, is to be able to cover everything. And it just so happens that on TikTok, a lot of the news I cover is political news because that's what's in the news cycle right now. If I was back in local news, it would be, I would be covering this, plus I'd be covering, fires and car accidents and home invasions and all that stuff. So the politics thing, it was just kind of an accident. And it's quite frankly, it's just because of what's going on. Somebody just came to my door. It's because of what's going on in the world right now. That's where the politics came in. I don't love politics. I find it fascinating though. And I think journalists, we don't have the luxury of not liking something. It's our job to find out what's interesting in everything. Whenever I talk to journalism students or I'm like teaching, how to put together packages and stuff like that, my go-to is always go outside and tell me a story about the grass. Tell me a story about the lawn and make it interesting. That's your job. Figure it out, make it interesting, find out what's interesting about that. That's the only thing that has kept me going in all of this politics, because quite frankly, I hate it. It's annoying, it's rancorous, it's loud, it's annoying, it puts me in a bad mood. It incites negative comments towards me. I get nothing from it, but it's my job to cover it because people, again, are desperate for the truth. They're desperate for news. They're desperate for information. And they're desperate to find people that they can trust and believe.
I have a question for you.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, Sophia. Can I go?
No, go ahead, Bea.
Okay. So you said that TikTok's working for you for news and etc. But why do you think that it's working and why Instagram is not?
I find that TikTok is a really good blend of the things that I'm good at. So I'm good at quick, concise news with video. Instagram is not a good platform for me to do that because the function of Instagram is pictures, still imagery is. I know Instagram is trying to move into more video, but they're clunking along. They're not doing it in in a cohesive way. I mean, the stories work, but the stories are only 15 seconds. And so I end up putting my TikTok videos on Instagram stories, but they get chopped up because, you know, my TikTok stories are 58 seconds. So they get chopped up in 15 seconds. And, you know, it gives people an opportunity to skip past. Whereas on TikTok, you don't have that opportunity. If you got them, it's a captive audience. And TikTok is really set up for video and to be quick. And so in my view, it's a good place for news. And quite frankly, it's a good place right now because not a lot of people are doing it. Not a lot of people are doing news on there. And so, and here's the thing is by the time you guys get proficient in journalism and you're out there and you understand how to cover stories, you understand how to make it interesting, and you understand how to do it fair and balanced and right and accurate every single time, there's going to be a new platform that's going to be even better, you know, and it's not going to be TikTok anymore. It's going to be something else. So always be looking. That's the other part of our job, is always look at what's the future, what's happening, what's coming tomorrow, what's the latest, what's the news tomorrow. It's another skill that you'll develop over time. So I like TikTok just because it's set up to be quick and it's set up for video, which works for TV journalists perfectly. And Instagram just doesn't translate the same way. It's fun. I mean, I have an Instagram following, but it's just like pictures and it's just not, it's boring to me.
Mm-hmm. I see. And you think it's just like for news like politics or any kind of
thing? Entertainment news. I mean, there's people on there that do entertainment news. They're doing really well. There's people that do local news. They're doing really well. I mean, it goes back to and this is all just, these are my theories based on my experience in television and my experience now with that particular app. And it's just, I just can't say enough how people are desperate for real information. They really are, but they're very quick to not believe you. So that's the downside of it. And with that particular platform, they have a very easy access to you to tell you're full of shit. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? So that's the downside to it. And but see, I've been on television for 20 years. I've been called every name in the book, and sometimes by my bosses. So like, none of it bothers me anymore. I'm past it. So it doesn't bug me.
For young journalists that are kind of like interested in politics, what would you what kind of advice would you kind of give them? Like, where would you say, like, how can they go into it? I know it's kind of hard to be unbiased at first. So how did you kind of like start at that?
Yeah. So the thing about being unbiased is universal for all journalists, because it doesn't matter if you're covering a local mayoral race or if you're covering a criminal case. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's the same concept. So for example, you've got a Democrat and a Republican running for mayor in your town where you're going to be, in your small market where you're going to be reporting. You got a Democrat and Republican. Obviously, that's even easier to cover because you need to get a comment from both sides of that, right? And then on the other hand, say you've got a murder and they've arrested someone. That person is innocent until proven guilty. That's how our country works. And that person may be a horrible human being and you may hate that person's guts, but that's not your job. Your job is to put that aside. So my response to what you're saying about being unbiased, it comes with time and it comes with experience. You will make 1,000 mistakes. No joke. You will make 1,000 mistakes in your first market, maybe even your second market. But you will learn over time how to phrase things in certain ways to make it sound neutral, even when it's like you think it might be biased, but it'll sound neutral on television. You'll learn all the ways to do that. The other thing I will say about being unbiased is you understand that you have to have both sides always. And the easiest way to be unbiased is to not put words in someone's mouth. So attribute where you're getting this information. That's the easiest way. So like I did a story about, you know what, can I play it for you? Can I just play you a TikTok real quick?
Yeah, of course. Let me give you permissions to share your screen.
Yeah, let me do that, because then it'll show you, because it's a story about the stimulus. Am I okay to share?
Yeah, you should be good.
Let's see. Where did I put it?
Kind of when you're pulling that up, maybe to this might be a quick like for you to answer, but
Sure.
Why did you kind of like take the social media approach with TikTok? Like why didn't you use some other platform and try to build your platform from there? Was TikTok something that you heard was being used?
No, I mean, I have a platform. I have my own television show, and
Yeah.
I have my own, I have it. So it doesn't, hold on, let me see. Where is that? Oh, right here. I have my own platform. It's just exposure. So being on everything, like I'm not saying don't be on something. Absolutely. You need to have exposure everywhere. You need to have exposure on Instagram and Twitter and Facebook and TikTok and whatever social media it is. You have to be there. Never pick and choose. Be on all of them. Make sure you have a presence everywhere, because your audience, in theory, is everywhere. Let's see.
That's great advice, especially now because we have a lot of Gen Z and millennials that are graduating. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of something, I feel like social media is definitely being taken off, and a lot of our older professors didn't expect that until now.
Well, your professors, here's the thing, they mean well. They mean well. They mean well, but they're not in the field anymore. So they don't understand. Most of them aren't in the field. I mean, I actually have a couple of very dear friends who are still in the field, and they teach at USC, and like they're doing great. But look, everybody who's in the field on television has a presence on all social media. In fact, it's required. It's in your contract. You have to be. And here's what you guys have to understand as well. I came from an age when I could determine that I would not participate in this, but I've learned nowadays that it's not an option. Not only are you required to be on social media in most markets, but they also own your handle. So they will own your name. The station will own your name, not you. So if you gather 100,000 followers on a Twitter account for your small market, when you leave, you have to abandon all those followers. They won't let you take them. That's new. When I was starting out, I put it in my contract that I own all my social media handles, because I was putting in the work to grow the following. So if you can, that's a little tip that people don't think about. If you can, in your contract, negotiate to keep your own handle, and you retain ownership of all of your handles, and the station has no rights to them. But you will post on behalf of the station. You will post your stories. You will engage with the audience. You will do all of those things. But in the end, you own it. That way you take it with you. And so it's a leverage point for you when you go to your next market. So let me just show you, going real back to unbiased stuff. Let me just show you. It looks like the stimulus negotiations are dead. That's according to the president. Moments ago, the president tweeted that he has put a stop to the negotiations until after the election, saying after he wins, he'll immediately pass a major stimulus bill. First, there is no guarantee that he will win re-election. And two, even if he does. Oh, you can't see it?
No.
Bummer. Hold on, let me see. I wonder why it's not letting me, because usually there's a optimize screen. Why won't it let me it won't optimize screen. That's all right. Bottom line is, attributing where you're getting the information is the best and easiest way to be unbiased. And just in your own head, understand that every single word you say gets picked apart. So instead of, if you said, the president said this, and you accurately and fairly represent what he said, and you put the quote up on a graphic, you're in the clear. But if you try to paraphrase what the president said, then all of a sudden that's a bias, because that depends on how you feel about the president, how you're going to interpret what he says. So if you just straight up take the quote and put it up there, then that's an easy way to not be biased.
I have another question
Yeah.
on social media. Do you think YouTube still works?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I have a YouTube page too. Everything. You need to, if you haven't done it already, I'm sure most of you already do because you're young, but if you haven't already, make sure you snag your name on every platform. That you have and don't do your nickname or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 at the end. See if you can get your name, because that's going to be invaluable to you when you go from market to market. And yes, YouTube is absolutely valuable. In fact, you can make money on YouTube. Like it's a good place to be. Absolutely. And people are looking for news there too. I mean, our digital platform BeondTV, we have a huge YouTube presence.
I see.
So with this upcoming election, how do you think it will go because of social media and the new voters, like the Gen Z voters? Do you think social media is really going to affect it?
I don't think necessarily it's about Gen Z or social media this time. I think it's about the sheer volume of mail-in votes and absentee votes that came through the mail. So I've covered every election since early 2000s, and this level of early ballot submission has never, this hasn't happened. The fact that tens of millions of people have already turned in their mail-in ballot on October 22nd is a huge deal. I think that is what is going to change this election. I do think though, and I only say this because I'm getting to know Gen Z very well from my TikTok. You guys are all over that. And I will say about your generation, you guys are very active in politics. You're very active in the news, whereas millennials were very passé and blasé about news. They were not as engaged, I don't think, as your generation. However, your generation has a very, because of your lack of experience in the world and your lack of experience in journalism, that younger generation is the one who gets suckered into those biased commentators, I will call it, because you don't understand the difference between unbiased and biased and where your information is coming from. And I will say, and this is all just based on what I've seen from my 600,000 plus followers on TikTok, who are primarily Gen Z. There's a tendency in that generation to cherry pick information. That's another quick way to become very biased very quickly, is to cherry pick information. Your job as a journalist is to understand in its entirety the story. And so I always say, you have to, if the story is about the stimulus, if that's the story that you're charged with reporting, is what's happening with the stimulus, you need to read USA Today, CNN, Fox News, Breitbart, CNBC. You need to read like 20 different publications about that one story, so you can find the commonality in all of them. And when you find that commonality, there's your fact. There's the fact. Even better, go to the source. I always go straight to the source. So if there's a stimulus bill that's out there and my story is on a stimulus, I find the actual bill, go to the US, the congress.gov website. I go to the bill and I read the bill. I read all 300 pages. It takes me 6 hours and I read it, the whole thing. So I fully understand the context of what they're talking about, not just the talking points that each side is feeding into those very biased sources. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
That's another quick way to get unbiased, is go straight to the source. Figure out who the source is and go to that source information and do that. So another good example is when the New York Times a couple of weeks ago, I don't know if you guys all, I'm sure you saw it, the New York Times did that huge story on the president's taxes and the fact that he only paid $750 plus, dollars in taxes, or whatever the number was. My followers on TikTok, I must have gotten 5,000 messages saying, why aren't you doing that story? And my answer was, as a journalist, I can't do that story because I don't have access to the source documents. The source documents are exclusive to the New York Times. So I cannot fairly represent that story because I haven't seen the documents myself, so I can't tell you what's in the documents. I can only tell you that the New York Times has it, and you can go check out what the New York Times had to say, right? So that's my experience telling me that if I were just to regurgitate what the New York Times said, then all of a sudden, what if the New York Times got it wrong? Now all of a sudden I got it wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not willing to put my ass out there because the New York Times made a mistake. Because that's how you become inaccurate and people lose faith in you.
Yeah.
That's all you have, is them having faith in you and you being credible every single day. That's all you have as a journalist. And as soon as you do anything to compromise that, you're screwed. So always go to the source to find the information. And once you found the source, then you read all the different things about it from all the different sides on all the political spectrums. And then you'll find there's always a through line. There's always a truth that everybody somewhere in there has. And if you get there, then you can go from that and build your story around the truth.
Awesome. Thank you. So Jordan, I do see that you have a question, then Savannah. So I'm going to do Jordan, Savannah, and then I think Abteen also had a question as well. Jordan, do you want to ask your question?
Yeah, of course. Oh, hi, Lisa. I'm such a big fan. Actually, been following you on TikTok for a while. That's the crazy part.
Thank you.
And because what I like about your TikToks is that you make it so easy to understand. And for me, I think you did a video on the stimulus bill, and you did it with I don't know, you kind of do like this move where you kind of put like all the the steps. And you did it in such a way where it's so easy to understand, because I find it so hard sometimes to do, to understand what's kind of going on sometimes. And so I guess my question to you is, how do you, out of all the information you have, I guess sometimes I have a problem with putting too much information, and you do it in a way where you're able to break it down so easy for people to understand. And so my question to you is, how do you go about that? Like, do you do the who, what, where, when, why, how? Or do you, I don't know, I'm just kind of curious on how you make it so concise.
Well, that is, first of all, thank you. Thanks for following and thanks for being so sweet. So look, putting too much information in your story is a rookie move. That is not uncommon. Everyone does it. I used to do it all the time. And that too, understanding what really matters comes with experience and time and repetition. But I always start every story after I write my notes and I do all my stuff, and I've got papers everywhere, like always. Everything I say to myself, okay, I know everybody wants to talk about the stimulus. What's happening today? First move, go to the source. What's happening? Understand what's on the calendar in the Senate and in the House. Understand what's happening. Go to my trusted sources that I have cultivated over all these years. Ask them what's going on. What do you know? Gather all the information. Once I have all the pieces written down, like I always write all my pieces down on one side of the paper, all the pieces, all the nuggets of information that I have, I always write down on one side of the paper. And then once I have all my nuggets, it's literally like 10 minutes worth of information. And then what I do is I think to myself, okay, I know my audience. What do they want to hear? What do they want to know? What questions are they going to have for me? I know if we're talking about the stimulus, they're going to say, am I going to get money? They're going to say, is my unemployment going to be extended? They're going to say, when is it going to happen? Really, who, what, when, where, why? You know, that's, but I do it not just who, what, when, where, why, just to do it. I do it based on what I think my viewers want to understand. What do they want to know? So I put myself in their position as if they're watching me and they're saying, what is, Lisa, tell me what's going on based on what I want to know. And so then I fill in those blanks. So then after I do all that, who, what, when, where, why, from their perspective, then I always spend however much time it takes to figure out, how am I going to tell this story creatively? How am I going to tell this story in a way that people understand? Like I just did a stimulus story 2 days ago, and I did it, it was like explaining all of the different stimulus packages in 90s dance moves. Like that's a full TikTok story. And I like did all these 90s dance moves, but it's a full, you know, I would never put that on television, like on local TV, but like it made sense for that audience because I know that's how they want to get their information. They want it to be fun. They want there to be dancing involved. They want there to be, you know, catchy and quick, but they want the facts. So how can I do that in a creative way? So I came up with that. But I always, even if it's not that dramatic, I always lead. My lead is always the most important part. Your stimulus, you're not getting a stimulus check right off the bat. Like put your best stuff up top. Best stuff always goes at the top. Your best video goes at the top. If you're doing this for local news, your best video always first. Your best sound, whatever the best sound is that you have, your nat sound that you have on your tape, right off the top. Best sound bite right off the top. Like don't drag it out. Make it interesting, quick, concise right off the top. So yes, it's typical for young journalists to put too much information. But if you gather all the facts and then you look at those facts and think in the minds of your viewer, what do they want to hear about? What do they really want to know? They want to know if it passed. They want to know when they're getting their money, if they're getting their money, and they want to know what's next. As long as I've answered those 3 questions, I've done my job. I hope that answers. I know that's long-winded, but I hope that answers your question.
Oh no, that answered it perfectly because I was just curious because I'm like, I hear you do 15-second ones and I'm like, how does she do this? Like it's so impressive to me. And so
it's experience. It's experience.
Okay.
It's just because I've been doing this for 20 years. So I know what people want to hear. And now I have the ability to be able to be creative in a way that I've never. That's the other fun thing that I like about TikTok is I've told stories on the news like this, but never to this level. Like this is on steroids, you know, like I've done a lot of really cool stories for the news and done creative things, but never to this magnitude. So this is now me just having fun doing this. And so now I'm getting to do what I do best, which is clear, concise, accurate, fair, balanced facts, fun way. It's like I'm winning at life right now. Like this is great. So you'll get there. It just takes experience. Start with your column of facts and nuggets and information, and then the who, what, when, where, why, based on what your audience wants to hear, based on what you know they want to know about. I always say, if I can answer their question in my story, my specialty is being able to answer their question before they ask it. So like, I already know whenever I post a video, I know they're going to say, I know at what point in the video they're going to be like, well, what about this? And then in my video, I answer it. And they're like, how'd you read my mind? It's because I already know what I know how their minds work, because all audiences are the same for the most part.
Awesome.
So if you can answer their question in your story, it's lights out. That's how you start hooking people. That's how you start gaining followers. That's how you start gaining trust and you start gaining credibility, is because you've answered their question as they are thinking it. And they're like, who is this soothsayer?
I love that. Jordan, did that kind of answer your question?
Yeah, that answered my question. I might have one more
Yeah.
because you said something and it kind of like clicked in my head. Something that I've noticed about news packages is sometimes they can always be so similar and stuff like that. And so one thing is, you talked about creativeness and how you said you've done kind of fun stuff. And I've noticed that in journalism, it has to be very traditional and things like that, which is cool. But I'm just saying, I'm curious on some fun things that you've done that are not kind of the traditional journalism, like for your packages. I just kind of want to know maybe ideas or something like that. You kind of brought it up, so I was like, I have to ask her.
Well, look, I mean, any opportunity I get to be myself and be relatable, I also find that helps your credibility and that helps draw people to you, is if you're relatable. If they're like, she's on TV, but like, I feel like we could go have a cocktail. Like, she's fun. Or like, she's like me, she likes this or that, that always helps as well. I mean, I don't know. Gosh, Jordan, that's a good question. I've done thousands of stories for the news over my career. I mean, I've done, I guess, I got to fly in an F-15, and that was sick. And those got Emmy nominations. It was a series I did. I got the Pentagon, because I just pestered the Pentagon for a month or two. They allowed me into the top secret weapons school in Las Vegas, and they've never let anybody in after or before me. And so I have a 2-part series on it's like Top Gun, but for the Air Force. And so it's a secret school within the Air Force, and they let me in, and I did a whole 2-part series on it. And then they let me fly in an F-15. It was sick. It was like best experience of my entire career. Like, for real, it was awesome. So that was a fun package to put together. I mean, it was serious. And I mean, this is life and death. And these military, airmen, they train for war. Like, that's their whole life. But I mean, how am I not gonna like treat it like a Top Gun package? Because I did, like, it was like the Need for Speed and high fives and the whole thing. Like, that was fun. I mean, how could you not do that? So there are opportunities in certain stories at certain points in your career where it's appropriate to do something fun, and it's appropriate to do something that's funny. And don't be afraid to do that if it's appropriate. I mean, if it's a story about a murder, it's not appropriate. Or if it's a story about a fire where somebody's house burned down, it's not appropriate. But, when you're flying an F-15s, like, it's appropriate to do, a high five, Maverick high five. It's appropriate, the Need for Speed, and like all of that's fine. But just find I always was really good at finding the opportunity to show my personality a little bit, because I knew if I was able to show a little bit of personality, while also being smart and being fair and accurate and balanced, but also be able to show a little bit of personality, I knew that was going to draw people to me, which in turn always helps you and the station, and then they don't fire you. You know what I'm saying? And then if you get in trouble because you had a little bit too much fun, but the station gets a bunch of calls about who's this fun reporter, like, who is this person, then it balances out.
So we're gonna do a little speed round really quick because we have to leave in like 10 minutes. So
Oh my God, yes.
So Savannah, go ahead and ask your question, and then Abteen, we're gonna just make it like super quick. So
Sorry, I won't make it quick.
ready?
I talk a lot.
No, you're totally fine. I just don't want to like make you past your time that you gotta
No,
go.
that's okay. That's okay. Go ahead.
Okay,
Savannah.
so I'll try and make this quick.
Sure.
Hi, I'm the one
Hi.
that's emailing you, so it's nice
Oh, hi. Thank you.
My question, I'm a senior, so I'm preparing my newsreel, and I know a lot of it is me going out and filming my own packages, but do you think something like TikTok would be a good thing to add in there?
If you've got something that's solid, absolutely. Like if you've got a news story in your TikTok that makes sense, and it's well done and it doesn't look janky, absolutely. The thing about tapes is that tapes, and I have a business and I help young journalists put together their tapes too. And I will tell you about your tape. As long as it's good and it shows that you're competent, that you have a good stand-up montage at the beginning, 10 to 15 clips of you at an event, covering something, being somewhere, talking to somebody, do action, moving around, demonstrating, pointing, like this is where this happened, all of that stuff always looks good. And then 2 packages. And if you have a TikTok that's killer, absolutely put it on there. Absolutely. I think they're hesitant, news directors are hesitant these days, but they know how important view counts are on your social media. And so I wouldn't hesitate for 1 second. If you had a great video, put it up there. Absolutely.
I also think, based on what you said about TikTok, that it might help you get more of a loyal audience. Seeing your personality kind of coming through TikToks.
Yeah.
I thought that was something interesting that you were talking about.
Yeah, it certainly is interesting. I mean, look, all social media is a way for viewers to get to know the person they see on television. That's what it is. And it's a platform for you to continually put out your work so people get to know you. And I cannot stress enough, being fair, balanced, and accurate consistently over time is really what it comes down to, all anybody cares about. Your personality could be awesome. You could be the best person in the world, but if you're wrong all the time, people will hate you. Mm-hmm. It doesn't matter how great your personality is. If you're wrong or biased or, inaccurate, it doesn't matter. So do the fundamentals first, fair, accurate, balanced, consistent over time, and then add the flair later once you get a good baseline. Because getting that baseline is not easy. It's hard because it takes a lot of work to make sure it comes out that way. And you're gonna get a lot of feedback. The thing about TikTok is you get a lot of feedback real quick, and it's not all pleasant. But when you hear those negative things, don't just brush it off. Understand what they're talking about and see if what they say actually makes sense. And then you learn. That's one of those things you learn and say, oh, if I say it this way, it sounds biased. So let me figure out a different way to say that next time so it doesn't sound biased.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And then Abteen, I think you did have a question as well.
Yes. Hello.
Hi.
Hi, my name is Abteen. It was great, a lot of information. I was just trying to get it. Only for one specific fact, like about actually the editorial judgment of news, and from perspective of someone who actually main focus would be on providing principles of integrity, fair, like basically accuracy and balance about news. So there's a lot of controversial feedbacks about how news is portrayed on, for example, rival stations predominantly these days. In terms of accuracy and trust, many people have, for example, are on the side of Democrats or Republican or other stuff. So there's a challenge that's, you are not sure who to trust, but once you verify the sources, then you will apply and compare, okay, which one, are the most trusted or, your favorite and stuff. But in terms of being a freelance or professional journalists, as a TikTok, so your sources are technically reflection of the original contents. How would you think having like a YouTube, TikTok, or other like a personal blog for professional journalists will help them basically becoming more informative, while the major news platforms are technically the real platform, like the real provider of the news? How would you think the audiences will get ratings, and how does that even impact your career? Is it something to necessarily entertain, or financially will that, like, for example, if you get ratings,
I
then it
see what you're
starts
saying.
getting
I
paid?
think I understand what you're saying. I think what you're saying is, are you making social media journalists a job, basically?
Yes, yeah. Although I'm not going to be a freelance, but as a professional who has affiliated with the stations and then have a power to necessarily raise their voice and communicate with audiences in terms of exposing your knowledge. So is it
Here's
financially?
the thing is that if you, I find that, well, see, look, it's hard for me to say that because I've come from 20 years of established news television. So I have credibility and I have a name because I've been doing this a long time, and because people have been watching me on television on ABC, NBC, for years. So I don't, but now as a business owner, I own my own. And so I have the benefit of all of those years in credibility and knowledge and recognizability. My name is recognized. And so that is what allows me to have my own. I don't know how independent journalists would work nowadays without that credibility. And I think you have to put in the time in you have to put the time in at a newspaper, at a TV station, at a radio station. You have to put in the time in order to get the credibility, because there's so many ways that people can discredit you if you're just, freelancer by yourself. If you're a freelancer who freelances and writes pieces for, Good Morning America, that's one thing, because you've written for some credible organization and you gather, credibility that way. I know freelancers that do that for sure. But just being rogue on your own on the internet, I'm sure it's possible. I just have never done that, and I don't know how.
Oh, it's because it's so crucial. Because becoming an informative political correspondent is a little bit, obviously dramatic, facing a lot of challenges compared to like maybe just regular basic, for example, storytelling correspondent features sport or other who actually just creates.
I'm going to cut you off for a second just because we do have like 1 minute left with Lisa.
Okay.
Sorry about that. I hope that answered your question.
Thank you. I got it.
Sure.
Shelby, I know you did put in the chat as well. How did you find your voice in journalism?
What was it?
I'm gonna mute you really quick, Ebtine. How did you find your voice in journalism?
I know I keep going back to this, but it's time. The person I was at the beginning is definitely not the person I am now. It takes a lot of time, and it takes a lot of mistakes. You're going to make a lot of mistakes, and your boss is going, can you guys tell me, are most of you on the track to go into local news, like that track, or are you doing other things? Is that what most of you are doing?
I think so. Most of them should be.
Okay.
Well, I want more entertainment.
Okay, even entertainment.
And local, yeah.
Yeah, well, even that. In a news, professional news organization, you're going to get yelled at. It's just part of the job. You're going to make mistakes. You're going to get in trouble. You're going to do things you're not supposed to do just because you don't know any better. And that's okay. That's part of the learning process. That's how all of us learn. I can't tell you the amount of times I got called into my boss's office to be yelled at for something that I did that I didn't realize was a problem, but it was a problem, you know? So I found my voice over time. The person I was at the beginning is nowhere close to the person I am now. And that's just because I've gained so much experience and knowledge that nobody, I would say by the time I got into my 5th year on television, by my 5th year, I was pretty much this, you know, 5 years in, nobody was messing with me because I was doing everything right, accurate, fairly, consistently every day. But it took time. It's going to take everybody time, and that's okay. Don't be discouraged. They're going to yell at you. Like I said, my first job for 2 years, I cried every day. So it's normal. And all of my friends that started at the bottom and worked their way up, everybody did this. This is how everybody works. So you might not cry every day, but like, it's hard. If it was easy, everybody in the world would do it. It's not an easy job, but it's worth it if you believe in facts and you believe in journalism and you believe in information and you believe in sharing with people that you know is true and fair. If you believe in all of that, it's worth it. But if you don't hardcore believe in it, the money is crap and your life is not your own. My life was not my own for 17 years. So you got to be sure. You got to be sure, and you got to really believe in it.
So last question before you leave, because I know the debate literally just started right now.
That's okay.
Can you kind of like give, like, what's one sentence of advice that you would give to young journalists going into the field now? Like, one sentence. What would you say?
Going into the field now, don't be afraid to be yelled at. Don't be afraid to be yelled at. Don't be afraid to make mistakes. Do everything you possibly can to not make a mistake. But if it happens, it happens. And the best journalists the next day come back to work and start all over again. Today's news is tomorrow's toilet paper. Like today's newspaper is tomorrow's toilet paper. Do you know what I'm saying? Every day, that's the beauty of this job. The beauty of this job is every day you have a new chance to start again and to redeem yourself if you messed up yesterday or grow from where you were yesterday. That's the best part about this job. And that's the worst part about this job. But the fact is that every day, believe in it every day. Don't be afraid to make a mistake. And the next day, show up and fix it if you screwed up the day before, or build on it if you didn't.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Lisa. I know, Abtine, you had another question. I'm going to put her email in the chat for everybody who does have like multiple questions to ask her. What is the best email to reach you for them to kind of like email you?
Yeah, I will try my best to get back to you guys because I'm really busy, but you can send it to lisa@carlosandlisa.com.
Okay.
And I will do my best to get back to you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I know the
You're welcome. Good luck to all of you. This is a fun time. This is a fun part in your career. Do great work, be fair, and do the best you can every day.
Would I be able to take a picture of all of us?
Yeah. Sure.
Okay. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Thank you so much.
All right.
Have a great day.
Go watch the debate, you guys. It's important.
Bye. I'm gonna put it in the chat. I'm gonna